The Latino community is one that makes up 19% of the US population, with 1% of proper news coverage, if that. The Latin community is one of the largest ethnic minority groups.
There should be a focus of truth and balance in the news. There is no right or wrong side of these stories, which is exactly what they are. There is no objectivity behind it. The news is telling the stories of people and their communities, but journalists and reporters can sometimes bring their own perspectives, even if not always on purpose.
It's a common occurrence that people will say that Latinos have taken jobs. This has unfortunately been adopted into the news mindset. In an NBC report, John Sagenthaler delivered,
"A new trend in the American workforce. Hispanics are taking a large share of the new jobs created in the U.S. economy."
The news is how millions of people learn about the world. With that in mind, the narrative becomes so much more important. The framing of the story is unbelievably fundamental. The main part is how the story is established. Anchors typically stick to a few stock formats.
The Western, the crime story, the intrigue, and the scandal. Latinos are poorly underrepresented in media. The few times the Latino community are in the news, it's in bad situations or in politics. Latinos languish in the news. The main times Latinos are in the news are for immigration, conflicts, and election times.
Border Patrol agents are the heroes. Their efforts to stop illegal immigration is the most patriotic act they can do. The entire goal is to prevent this and not to educate. Illegal immigration is this horrible thing. People don't get the luxury of knowing why Mexicans immigrate or any background. These studios don't have anybody providing any research or information that would make this all make sense. Latinos that truly should be in the news and known about are rarely ever talked about. Latino celebrities, government officials, scholars, and so many more are just never talked about.
We were lucky enough to interview En Familia Radio's Luis Salinas about Latino news coverage in today's society.
Buenas tardes, soy Luis Salinas y trabajo para una estación de radio católica que se llama En Familia Radio.
In the news, how often is it that you hear about Latin or Hispanic people?
It seems like we only hear news about Hispanic Latinos during election times. When there's a government or presidential election like there is now, we hear news about Hispanic Latinos, and unfortunately it's almost always bad news, or news that degrades the Hispanic community. They forget that Hispanic community contributes a lot to the United States, starting with the social work in the fields, the farm workers, remembering Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and the work they do for farm worker rights, and those working to harvest crops in the fields of California, Texas, and Arizona. And yes, it does seem like Hispanics, the community, are often used to sway votes for different parties or certain candidates. Many times it seems that the news only covers what sells the most. The television networks and commercial radio stations give the news that paying audiences want to hear. When there's news that might be painful or personally challenging to me, or where I might have a responsibility, sometimes I don't want to see that news and prefer to change the channel. So I feel that many times the television networks and radio broadcasters choose certain news stories that only attack and may end up offending the Hispanic community. When watching English news versus watching Spanish news, what are the differences you see? Sometimes I see that Spanish language news doesn't talk enough about the needs we have as a community and being more demanding. And I feel that the English radio and TV stations are very closely tied to, or at least conditioned by politics. If you see an English station from a certain news agency, they'll give one news story, but then you change to another English station and they have a different vision or perspective. So where can we find out what the real news is? In Spanish stations, I say, sometimes they do give us the real news, but unfortunately, sometimes they lean more towards entertainment. news about artists and singers rather than talking about the political situation in the country. But again, it's the policy of television stations to give people what they are willing to buy. Where there's an economic interest, that's what is provided to the public. If we wanted to see more cultural content, they would give us more cultural content, right? But we want to watch La Rosa de Guadalupe. Or on other channels. We want to see Jerry Springer, right? But they want to watch, I don't know, crazy shows. They want to watch a series, a Netflix series. Which one has the most impact? A cultural series or a series about a criminal, a serial killer? And that's what they'll give people. That's what they're buying. Bastards. Hey, in the end, we're all to blame. The TV station isn't to blame, it's just a company. It'll give what they get paid for, right? But we should be more demanding as an audience, asking for higher quality programs in the news.
As much as anybody tries, it is impossible to be unbiased in the news. Unfortunately, news channels come with perspectives. As Luis had said, news channels bring in different perspectives for their audiences. It's a gross thing that Latinos are used to sway votes or to promote policies. It's a shame that the news works this way. Latinos cannot keep getting lampshaded in today's society.
When is the last time you saw any Latino people in the news?
Probably getting arrested.
Or endorsing presidential policies.
Latinos languish in the news.